The first 24 years of my life were destroyed by two men with their own hands. The first was Ethan, my childhood friend. To vent his anger for Vivian Knox, he personally broke my legs, making it impossible for me to ever step onto the figure skating rink again. The second was Adrian Hunt, who saved me from despair. He appeared when I was most helpless, and took me away from that painful place. He encouraged me to go to college, cherished me, and helped me emerge from the shadows. But when I was preparing to return home to continue my studies, he testified against me, falsely accusing me of academic fraud. Later, he even went so far as to sever the tendons in my hand, leaving me completely disabled. I died miserably on the streets. When I opened my eyes again, I was reborn the night before my legs were broken. Arya, tomorrow is my birthday. You must come. Before me, Ethan Shaw spoke the exact same words as in my previous life. I smiled. This time, I won't attend that appointment that would break my legs. I'll watch how they walk into the trap I've set for them. My heart sank like a block of ice, my fingertips slightly numb. Sure enough, he said the same thing as in my previous life. But I wasn't ready to give up. I tried to find an excuse not to go. But I have something. Before I could finish, Ethan frowned, his tone filled with dissatisfaction, immediately bringing up our friendship of over 10 years. Arya Walker, what do you mean? Have I ever missed any of your birthdays? Are we friends or not? My face remained calm, but my heart was in turmoil. In my previous life, I was deceived by his sweet words into going to a VIP room, where my legs were broken. Suppressing the surging pain, I pretended not to notice the harshness in his tone, and continued probing. I must be there. Ethan's tone was firm, leaving no room for negotiation. Whether you want me as a friend of over 10 years is up to you. I would never forget that in my previous life, after learning my legs were broken, he cut off contact unilaterally. He even walked away decisively when I was mocked and pushed down by Vivian's group of friends, just like today. I didn't understand why over 10 years of growing up together resulted in such calculated betrayal. Fortunately, I was reborn. In my previous life, I swallowed my losses. In this life, I will never repeat the same mistakes. But plans can't keep up with changes. I had just reached the intersection when a car came speeding toward me like crazy, too fast to dodge. I instinctively closed my eyes, thinking I couldn't escape this disaster, that rebirth was just a cruel joke from fate. The next moment, a force pulled me backward. Stumbling to steady myself, still shaken, I looked up and met a pair of dark, deep eyes. It was Adrian. The physiological disgust made me feel sick enough to vomit. In my previous life, after my legs were broken and I became an outcast, he was the one who protected me. But he was also the one who, when I was accused of academic fraud, didn't hesitate to give false testimony and personally destroyed my future. Are you okay? His gentle voice made Adrian seem kind. But this time, no longer deceived, I could clearly see the coldness in his eyes. I didn't understand why Adrian was willing to set up this trap in my previous life, but I remembered that when I was accused of academic fraud and tried to clear my name with evidence, he claimed responsibility for the accusation as my boyfriend and even publicly apologized. Online there were many stories about how good Adrian was to me. Netizens firmly believed the academic fraud was real. Otherwise, why would Adrian, who loved me so much, take the blame for me? The betrayal from someone close left me with a reputation I could never clear. After that, I became disheartened and resigned to my fate, but then someone cut my tendons and Adrian imprisoned me in a villa. I had completely become a useless person who could only depend on him. In this new life, I would not only get rid of these two scumbags but also get revenge. Arya, what's wrong with you? Seeing me remain silent for so long, Adrian instinctively frowned and called out. The flash of impatience in his eyes was clearly visible. This time, I didn't hesitate to shake off his hand. Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Dropping those words, I turned to leave, but Adrian chased after me. I saved you and all I get is a thank you? What, does Mr. Hunt want me to pay with my body? I looked at Adrian sarcastically. He was shocked by my attitude. That's right. At this point in my previous life, we weren't familiar with each other. Logically, I should have been extremely grateful to him. But the hatred from my previous life made me unable to tolerate him at all. While Adrian was distracted, I had already gotten in my car and left. Back home, looking at everything familiar, tears streamed down my face. Seeing me cry, Mom and Dad thought Ethan had bullied me and quickly asked questions. To avoid worrying them, I casually made up an excuse. But being able to see Mom and Dad again made me quite content. In my previous life, after I was imprisoned, when Mom and Dad couldn't find me multiple times, they suspected Adrian might be harming me. Unfortunately, they were eventually plotted against, losing not only the company but also their lives. Fortunately, everything was still in time now. After comforting Mom and Dad, I quickly hired someone to investigate Adrian, as well as Ethan and Vivian. 3 hours later, I received all their information. Looking at the densely packed text, my heart felt like it had fallen into an ice cave. So that's how it was. It turned out the first person to fall for Vivian wasn't Ethan, but Adrian. Unfortunately, as childhood friends who grew up together, the confession that should have been spoken was delayed because of Ethan's appearance. From then on, Adrian became Vivian's guardian, and I became a pawn in their game. I flipped through their information while reading the messages Ethan sent me. I'm waiting for you, Arya. If you don't come, my birthday won't be complete. Arya, didn't you say you'd stay with me forever? You won't even come to my birthday. I miss you so much. The 99+ messages indicated that Ethan wanted me dead. Finally, I replied with one message. I'll be there. Immediately, Ethan replied, I'll wait for you. In the past, we used to exchange messages back and forth like this. Ethan even swore to me, I'll always reply to your messages instantly. And Ethan really did do that, but everything changed after Vivian appeared. I didn't understand how a scholarship student could change Ethan in just half a year. In my previous life, I really disliked Vivian. She always used her scholarship student status to play the victim. When I asked her to submit group assignments, she would cry and say, Arya, do you look down on me because I'm poor? Is that why you're targeting me? At first, Ethan would still take my side and scold Vivian. Are you crazy? How is that what she meant? But later, Ethan would just frown. Come on, Arya, Vivian didn't mean it. At that time, I didn't notice anything wrong. Sometimes I would even complain to Ethan about Vivian. But all of this became the catalyst for him breaking my legs. He looked at me viciously and said, Do you really look down on people that much? What has Vivian ever done to you? Why do you always target her? Is it just because she likes me? Arya, when did you become so vicious? You think you can insult people just because you know how to skate? Let's see how you skate in the future. That day was the darkest moment of my life. I even thought about dying. Later, my parents went to the Shaw family for me, but no one would testify for me. My parents were even targeted by the Shaw family. Later, I learned that was just the beginning of my life's descent into darkness. After collecting myself, I made several phone calls before falling into a deep sleep. Early the next morning, Ethan's call came. Don't forget to come. Okay. After hanging up, I sent a message to Adrian using an unknown number. Then I contacted my parents and the Shaw family. After preparing everything, I headed to Ethan's birthday party. Today's show would depend on whether Vivian could handle it. Ethan's birthday party was quite grand. Everyone from our social circle and classmates came. Vivian stood by Ethan's side like a hostess. My arrival caused quite a stir. Everyone knew about my relationship with Ethan. Now seeing Vivian standing beside him, they naturally couldn't help but look over with eyes eager to watch the drama unfold. Seeing me, Vivian looked as if she had seen something terrifying and instinctively hid behind Ethan. I'm sorry, Arya. I just wanted to. I interrupted Vivian's deliberately timid words. Congratulations, happy birthday. I presented my gift and turned to leave, but Ethan grabbed me. You just got here and you're leaving? Are you really not giving me any face? When Ethan grabbed me, the anger in Vivian's eyes was about to burst out. I raised my eyebrows at her. Someone's about to cry. Why don't you go comfort her? Ethan followed my gaze and immediately saw Vivian's reddening eyes. Vivian, are you okay? Vivian shook her head pitifully. Ethan glared at me angrily. Arya, are you bullying Vivian again? Are you crazy? You can't go a day without bullying Vivian, can you? God, I hadn't even touched a hair on Vivian's head. How was I bullying her? It turned out that when someone favored another person, they really could be unreasonable. I rolled my eyes at Ethan. Am I bullying her from a distance? Ethan, you were the one who shamelessly insisted I come to your birthday, and now you're treating me like this. What does this mean? Was it intentional? My voice was loud, and people around us heard. Some even took my side. What's Vivian's deal? Arya didn't do anything, so why is she crying? Don't you know? She's just a delicate flower. These nearly mocking words made Vivian unable to keep face. But Ethan didn't think there was anything wrong with Vivian. Instead, he looked at me through gritted teeth. Are you satisfied now? Then Ethan chased after Vivian, who had run off. And I watched their retreating figures, lost in thought. Ethan, this is just the beginning. Tonight is destined to be a sleepless night. Then I looked toward the stage. My people were already prepared there. Tonight, no one will escape. Thinking of this, a smile unconsciously appeared on my face. But when I turned around, I met a pair of sinister eyes. How could I forget about him? As Vivian's greatest guardian, how could he not appear? The moment our eyes met, Adrian couldn't hide his expression in time, and could only give me an awkward smile. Just then my phone rang. Seeing the message content, I couldn't hide the smile in my eyes. Then I walked straight to Adrian. Mr. Hunt, what a coincidence. You know Ethan? Faced with my questioning, Adrian frowned slightly. I don't know him. Oh, then who are you here for? Today is Ethan's birthday. The words Adrian blurted out, he couldn't take back now. Under my aggressive gaze, Adrian smiled awkwardly. Just checking out the excitement. Is that so? I cleared my throat. Everyone, this person before me is the youngest vice president of Innovate.Tech. Don't you want to come meet him? My single sentence made the classmates present come forward. After they surrounded Adrian, I took the opportunity to go backstage. Sure enough, I witnessed an explosive scene. I quickly started recording a video. Then I returned to the hall. At this time, Ethan was looking for me. When he saw me, his eyes revealed an ambiguous smile. The birthday party would officially start in 5 minutes. During this time, Ethan kept staring at me, afraid I would run away. He didn't even notice that Vivian had left his side for quite a while. 5 minutes later, Ethan went on stage. Everyone, today is my birthday, and I'm very grateful for one person's presence. Everyone looked at me. However, Ethan beckoned to Vivian. She excitedly ran onto the stage, coquettishly saying, "Ethan, what are you doing? Today I might as well tell everyone the truth. Actually, the one I've always liked is Vivian. Arya and I are just childhood playmates who grew up together." At this moment, I no longer felt that heartbroken. Then Ethan generously expressed his love, and Vivian was moved to tears. Only at this moment did Ethan deign to spare me a glance. I want to say one more thing. Actually, everyone has been misunderstanding my relationship with Arya. I know that Arya spread those rumors herself. I've been fed up with her for a long time. Today I'm going to get justice for Vivian. As soon as Ethan finished speaking, several men rushed toward me. But before they could get close, the banquet hall doors were pushed open. My parents and Ethan's parents entered together. This time, Ethan was dumbfounded. "Mom, Dad, why are you here? It's your birthday. Is there something wrong with us coming?" The Shaw couple looked at Ethan in confusion. At this moment I screamed out, Who are you? What do you want?" Hearing the commotion, my parents rushed over. The Shaw couple also came to my side. At this moment, Ethan's face was written all over with embarrassment. He frowned at everything happening. But I secretly smiled at Vivian behind Ethan, then mouthed, "You're finished." The next instant, a series of moaning sounds came from the big screen. Everyone looked toward the sound, and what they saw was the most scandalous scene. The audio from the massive ceiling speakers did not just play, it tore through the ambient chatter of the banquet hall like a rusted saw blade. It began with a sharp, static hiss, followed by the unmistakable, rhythmic sound of heavy breathing. The screen, which had been displaying a slideshow of Ethan's childhood photographs, flickered. The bright, high-definition display dissolved into a grainy, vertically oriented video, clearly recorded on a mobile device. From behind a row of heavy backstage drapes. In the frame, the lighting was dim and red, cast by an emergency exit sign. Vivian Knox sat on a stack of folded banquet chairs, her delicate white lace dress pulled up past her knees. Standing over her, his hands gripping her waist, with a tight, desperate familiarity, was Adrian Hunt. "Adrian, stop." Vivian's voice came through the speakers loud and clear, stripped of the soft, trembling cadence she used in public. "Ethan's looking for me. If he catches us here, the whole thing is ruined. Let him look." Adrian's voice was lower, rougher than his usual polished tone. He leaned down, pressing his face into her neck. "The idiot is currently planning to have his thugs corner Arya in the parking lot. He's so busy playing the white knight for you that he hasn't even noticed his father's credit card is missing from his wallet." Vivian let out a sharp, breathless laugh, her hands wrapping around Adrian's shoulders. "He really thinks Arya is the one who spread those rumors about me. He's so easy to manipulate. Once he breaks her legs, the Shaw family will be tied up in a legal nightmare with the Walkers. While they're distracted, we can finalize the transfer of the Shaw Group's supply chain data to your new startup." "And Arya?" Adrian asked, his fingers tracing her collarbone. "Arya's a useless skater," Vivian sneered, her eyes glittering with a cold, ugly light on the screen. "Once she's in a wheelchair, she won't have the energy to look into where her scholarship funds actually went. Ethan will think he did it for me, and you'll have the seed capital for Innovate.Tech. It's a perfect circle." The video cut to a close-up of them kissing, a wet, desperate, and entirely unglamorous collision of mouths, before the screen went completely black. For 5 seconds, the only sound in the grand hall was the low hum of the projector's cooling fan. Then the lights went up. The transition was violent, exposing the pale, sweating faces of the guests. Under the bright halogen bulbs, Mr. Shaw, Ethan's father, was the first to move. His face had turned a deep, dangerous purple, the veins in his temples bulging like earthworms. He did not look at the guests. He did not look at the stage. He turned to his son, his hand moving so fast it was barely a blur. Crack. The slap was so hard it knocked Ethan off his feet. He crashed into a pyramid of champagne glasses, sending the delicate crystal shattering across the hardwood floor in a glittering, sticky wave. "You brainless, incompetent dog, Mr. Shaw roared, his chest heaving as he stepped over the broken glass. "Is this what I sent you to university for? To be used as a lapdog by a charity student and a street-level thief. Dad. Ethan wheezed, his cheek already swelling into a bright red welt, his hand clutching his face. Dad, it's a setup. Arya made that video. It's a deepfake. On the stage, Vivian stood frozen, her hands gripping the microphone stand so hard her knuckles were white. Her eyes were wide, darting from the angry crowd to the exit doors, but the security guards I had hired were already standing there, their arms crossed, blocking the path. I stood beside my parents, my face completely expressionless. My mother's hand was wrapped tightly around my forearm, her body shaking with a raw, protective fury. Mr. Shaw, my father said, his voice dropping into a register that made the entire room go quiet. Your son just admitted on stage that he hired men to corner my daughter in the parking lot. I believe the police are already waiting outside. The police did not take long to enter. 3 officers in dark blue uniforms strode through the shattered crystal of the entrance, their boots crunching on the glass. The lead officer, a stern-faced woman with her hair pulled into a tight bun, went straight to the stage. Vivian Knox? She asked, her voice carrying over the silent hall. I didn't do anything, Vivian stammered, her delicate flower act instantly returning as she let out a quiet, trembling sob. Mr. Hunt forced me. I'm just a student. I don't have any money. We have a warrant for your arrest regarding the embezzlement of university scholarship funds, the officer said, pulling a pair of steel handcuffs from her belt. And Mr. Ethan Shaw, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit grievous bodily harm. Ethan's mother, Mrs. Shaw, let out a high, thin shriek and fainted onto the nearest velvet chair, her pearl necklace catching on the backrest. Adrian Hunt, who had been standing near the edge of the crowd, slowly began to back toward the service hallway. He had already slipped his phone into his pocket, his face pale but his eyes still cold, calculating his next move. But I was already standing in his path. Mr. Hunt, I said, my voice quiet, almost sweet. Are you leaving so soon? The party has just begun. Adrian stopped. His jaw clenched, a tiny muscle twitching in his cheek. He looked down at me, and for a fraction of a second, the mask of the gentle, protective savior completely slipped. You knew, he whispered, his voice too low for the officers to hear. How did you get that video, Arya? I have a habit of keeping my eyes open, Mr. Hunt, I said, leaning in slightly. In my previous life, I was too blind to see the poison in the water. But this time, I made sure to test the well before I drank. He frowned, his dark eyes narrowing. Previous life? What nonsense are you, officer? I called out, turning to the female police sergeant who was currently lead escorting a weeping Vivian down the stage steps. This man, Adrian Hunt, is the co-conspirator. The corporate data they mentioned in the video, the Shaw Group supply chain database, is currently stored on his personal laptop in his car. I have the registration number. Adrian's breath caught in his throat. He took a half step back, his hand instinctively going toward his pocket, but 2 officers immediately closed the distance, pinning his arms behind his back before he could struggle. Mr. Hunt, the officer said. You're coming with us too. As they were led out of the grand hall, the guests began to murmur, their faces filled with a mix of shock and a quiet, vicious excitement. The great love story of the scholarship student and the wealthy heir had turned into a criminal circus in less than 10 minutes. I looked down at my hands. They were whole. My fingers were not broken and the tendons were intact. I could feel the cold, clean blood circulating through my veins, free of the leaden weight of my previous life's despair. My mother pulled me into a tight, desperate hug, her tears soaking into the shoulder of my coat. Arya, oh my baby, if we hadn't come, if you hadn't sent us that message. I'm fine, Mom, I whispered, my eyes fixed on the empty stage where the screen had gone dark. I'm completely fine. The detention center on the south side of the city was a gray, concrete block that smelled of wet wool and cheap floor wax. I sat behind the thick glass partition, my hands resting on the plastic counter. On the other side sat Ethan. His hair was uncombed, the expensive styling gel long gone, leaving his locks flat and greasy against his forehead. The cheek where his father had struck him was now a deep, purple bruise, and his orange jumpsuit looked 3 sizes too big for his frame. Arya, he whispered, his voice cracking as he reached for the intercom phone. Arya, please. You have to tell your father to drop the charges. It was Vivian. She told me you were trying to have her kicked out of the university. She said you hired people to follow her. I was just trying to protect her. I picked up the receiver, my voice cool and unhurried. Protect her, Ethan? By breaking my legs. Ethan flinched, his eyes darting to the guard standing near the door. I was just going to scare you. I didn't mean to actually. I would never hurt you. Like that, Arya. We've been friends since we were 6. At 6, you told me you'd always be my protector, I said, my voice flat. At 20, you watched Vivian's friends push me down the stairs after my skating career was over, and you walked away because you said I deserved to learn humility. Ethan's eyes widened, a sudden, sharp confusion crossing his face. What? What? Stairs? Arya, what are you talking about? That never happened. It did, I said, my gaze fixed on his bruised face. In the only life that mattered. And this time, I'm just making sure the script is read correctly. Arya, you're crazy, he stammered, his fingers trembling against the glass. You're acting like a lunatic. My father is going to disinherit me. He's already frozen my accounts. If I go to trial, I'll get 5 years. 5 years is a short time, Ethan, I said. In 5 years, you'll still be able to walk. You'll still have your legs. You should be grateful for my mercy. I hung up the phone. I didn't wait for him to scream or slam his hands against the glass. I stood up, walked out of the visiting room, and stepped into the cool gray rain of the afternoon. My father's car was waiting by the curb. As I climbed into the back seat, he handed me a tablet. The lawyers have finalized the corporate audit on Adrian Hunt's startup, my father said, his voice quiet but filled with a cold satisfaction. It turns out, he didn't just steal the Shaw Group's data. He's been using proprietary code from Innovate Tech's primary competitor, a firm owned by the state trust. The Federal Trade Commission is launching an investigation tomorrow morning. And the academic fraud? I asked, looking at the screen. The university board has already reviewed the logs, my father said. The scholarship funds that Vivian Knox received were routed through an account owned by Adrian's uncle. It's a clean case of grand larceny. The university is preparing a public apology to our family for the oversight regarding your enrollment status. I closed the tablet. Thank you, Dad. You've grown up, Arya, he said, looking at me through the rearview mirror, his eyes filled with a soft, slightly sad pride. You don't skate anymore, but you look like you're finally on solid ground. I am, I said, looking out the wet window at the passing city. But I'm not done with the ice yet. 2 weeks later, the rain turned to snow, covering the city in a thick, silent blanket of white. I walked into the conference room of the city's top legal firm. Adrian Hunt sat at the long glass table, surrounded by 3 lawyers in dark gray suits. His hands were clasped in front of him, his face pale and thin, but his posture was still straight, his eyes retaining that sharp, clinical coldness that had deceived me for so many years in my previous life. Arya, he said as I sat down opposite him, I didn't expect you to come yourself. I thought your father's lawyers would handle the settlement. I wanted to see your face, Mr. Hunt, I said, setting my wool gloves on the table. I wanted to see if the savior still had his smile. Adrian's lips curled into a dry, bitter line. He waved his hand, signaling his lawyers to leave the room. Once the heavy oak door clicked shut, he leaned forward, his voice dropping into a low, quiet register. You've ruined my company, Arya, he said. The federal investigation has frozen all our assets. The board has expelled me, and Vivian is currently testifying against me to get her sentence reduced to probation. You've done a very thorough job. It was easy, I said. You left a very clear trail. You were so busy playing the puppet master behind Vivian that you forgot that even a puppet needs a stage to stand on. Once I took away the stage, you fell. Why? He asked, his dark eyes searching my face with a genuine, desperate curiosity. We weren't enemies, Arya. Before the party, we had only spoken twice. Why did you target me with such personal hatred? The video. Backstage, you had that recorded weeks ago. You've been watching me. Because I know who you are, Adrian, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. I know about the academic fraud you were planning to pin on me next year. I know about the false testimony you were going to give to the university board. I know about the cabin in the north where you were going to keep me after my hand was ruined. Adrian's fingers tensed against the glass table. What cabin? Arya, what are you talking about? I don't own any cabin in the north. Not yet, I said, standing up and pulling on my gloves. But you would have. You like things that are broken, Adrian. You like women who have nowhere else to go, who have to look at you as if you are their god because you're the only one holding the key to their cage. But this time, I'm the one who owns the lock. I turned and walked to the door. Arya, he called out, his voice finally losing its control, rising in a sharp, cracked panic. The trial. They're looking at 10 years for corporate espionage. My family's name, it's going to be ruined. Your family's name was built on the bones of the people you broke, Adrian, I said, looking back over my shoulder. It's only fair that you join them in the dirt. The municipal ice rink was quiet at 6 in the morning. The only sound was the low, rhythmic hum of the refrigeration units, and the occasional drip of condensation from the high steel rafters. The ice was fresh, a smooth, glassy mirror that reflected the pale gray light of the dawn filtering through the high windows. I stood by the wooden barrier, dressed in my old black training suit, my skates laced tight. My left hand, whole and strong, gripped the cold wood of the railing. My legs, which had been shattered and useless in the dark streets of my previous life, felt solid, light, and alive under my weight. I stepped onto the ice. The first stroke was slow, the steel blade cutting a clean, sharp line into the frozen surface. The sound, shhhk, was the most beautiful thing I had ever heard. It was the sound of my childhood, the sound of my mother's applause, the sound of a life that had been stolen from me and that I had fought my way through hell to reclaim. I began to skate. I did not try the complex triple axels or the dramatic spins of my competitive years. I simply glided, my body moving with a natural, fluid grace that didn't need a judge's score to be perfect. The wind rushed past my ears, cold and sharp, wiping away the last lingering scent of the antiseptic and the gray concrete of the detention center. On the spectator bench near the entrance, my parents sat together under a heavy wool blanket, their faces warm and smiling as they watched me. Beside them stood a young man in a dark blue coat, the new coach of the national team, who had been waiting for my return. I finished my lap, stopping by the barrier with a clean, sharp spray of ice crystals. "You've still got the edge, Arya," the coach said, his voice quiet and respectful as he handed me a bottle of water. "The technique is still there. If we start training now, we can have you ready for the national trials by next winter." "I don't need the trials, coach," I said, my breath forming soft white clouds in the cold air as I looked down at the clean, white lines my skates had carved into the ice. "I don't need the medals anymore." "Then why are you here?" I looked at my mother, who was waving at me from the bench, her face filled with a peace she hadn't known in 2 decades. I looked at my hands, strong and untouched, ready to write a future that belonged to no one but me. "I'm here because the ice is mine," I said, my voice steady, clear, and entirely free of the shadows. "And this time, no one is going to break my stride."